Sports fans, get ready for Sportz-USA. Get sports from a personal point of view from seasoned professionals who've reported and lived the stories. Now let's go to the crew high atop the Sportz-USA press box. Hello, everybody. This is John Askins, and welcome to Sportz-USA.com, a discussion of what's going on in the world of sports today from veterans who have covered the story and know all the behind-the-scenes stories as well. This time of year, we can't keep from talking about college basketball, the Final Four, a pretty amazing slate of games this last week. And Kevin, what was your opinion on the last-second UConn shot?
Well, why not put it this way? If you're one of those people who just hates Duke, and, I have met my share of people for reasons they hate Duke just because they hate Duke, and that's probably because Duke has won so much, but you got a lot of satisfaction out of that if you did not like Duke. The way Connecticut was able to pull that off, at the last minute, shall we say, knocking down that pass, which created the loose ball. And then a guy hitting one from he must have been about 35 feet away. And,
the interesting thing was he wasn't their star either. He was, sort of a newcomer. But his dad had said that he had hit a couple of those. That he wasn't surprised that he nailed it at all. But it was just in like muscle memory, wasn't it? It was just in one motion.
Yeah, it really was. And it was just a remarkable deal. And, it's like, go on home, Big East.
My question was, why in the world did they try to throw the ball so long? There was only a couple of seconds left. All they had to do was get the ball in bounds. They probably would have been hacked, gone to the line, and then, even if they missed, it would have been a full court shot, not a half court shot.
Well, a couple of generations of Duke fans are going to be wondering that same question.
Yeah, I think so.
Why throw the ball? Just dribble it out because they're going to have to foul you at some point.
What was the stat that came out after the game? They are the first one seed to ever lose a game while leading by 15 at halftime. So that stat is now 134-1. If you hate Duke, all those memes came up immediately. So I guess they're like the Notre Dame of college basketball. Yeah. Let's introduce everybody. We threw it to Kevin Long immediately because he's our basketball aficionado, but we've got Lee Baker from Amarillo, John Kearns from Grand Junction, Colorado, Kevin, and Bo Carter is trying to get on with us. He's from Dallas, and Tom Russo is from the College Station area, and I'm here in Houston. And thanks again for joining Sportz-USA. Lee, you were going to throw in something about, the last-second shot, but all four of those games were great games, great for the sport, I thought.
It was kind of a joke. I was thinking, they always say in the NBA, you just turn on the last 2 minutes and watch the game and find out what happens. 3 of those 4 games, the last 20 seconds was perfect. I mean, if you just happened to turn the channel on at the end of the game, you got all you needed to see because of the way they played out.
You got any favorites now going into it? I mean, my favorite's still there. I lost my sentimental favorite. I was kind of pulling real strong for Houston, but Arizona's still showing their strength. I mean, they just wear you down. It was just methodical. So the other games, man, excitement to the finish.
My picks are doing pretty well. I had Arizona and Michigan. Unfortunately, they play here in the first game of the Final Four, and my surprise pick was Iowa. So I got to say my picks did pretty well this year. So, Tom, how about you? Who's your favorites?
Well, I think now I'm going to roll with UConn. I mean, the way that they came back in that Duke game was so impressive to me, just to be in position to make that long shot. You mentioned the big comeback that beat Duke, that being a record-breaking win. If you look at their losses this year, they had big leads in every one of those. I know Texas Tech was down by like 12 or 14 to them, and they came back. Can't remember the other teams, but I saw some stat where the 4 games that they lost, they had double-digit leads in every one of them and rolled the loss just like they did with UConn. I'm going to roll with UConn. That's who I'm going with. How about you, Kev?
Let me think. I'm not going with UConn. I don't think UConn's going to win it. But, boy, Michigan looked awful good. And Arizona, I'll tell you what, they look good. But, Texas Tech handled them. The time I saw that, Texas Tech handled them. And so I'd say, I'm not a betting man, but I'd probably would go with Michigan. If it was good, boy, they look strong. Now, here's the big story down in Abilene. The coach, Brad Underwood.
Yeah,
okay,
Illinois. That's right. He's been the journeyman. I know where you're headed with this. Yes.
Well, why don't I put it this way? He played college ball in Abilene for Hardin Simmons, and the whole Abilene media this week is really hitting on that one because I guess he was there a couple of years. A lot of people liked him and whatnot.
We started, he was a JUCO coach. He was a high school coach. I think he's getting close to 60, and this is his first big time in the spotlight. It's well-deserved, I think.
Yeah, but like I said, he played at Hardin Simmons, so you never know.
The Cowboys. All right, okay, so let's go around one more time. You got to pick one school. What's yours, Coach K?
I'm just going to stick with Arizona, even though they've got that big negative of not being able to shoot the threes. All the matrix say you got to be able to make those to be the champion, but I'm going to hang with them.
I'm going to go Michigan, although I really would hope Arizona would win. How about you, Tom?
Just because I've got to be different, I'm going with the Huskies of UConn.
Lee?
All right. I'm a Big Ten guy, so I'll just say Illinois because that makes everybody's picked at least one of the teams now.
I'm on.
All right, there's Bo.
Miracles
All right.
of technology.
Okay, so Bo, you're right in a crunch moment here. You got to make a pick. Bo Carter from Dallas. Who is your pick to win the Final Four and the championship?
I'm kind of like Coach K. I like Arizona. I'm trying to figure out. I think every team has like 6 or 7 players from Eastern Europe on them.
Yeah.
The other night, Brad Nessler said there are a whole lot of Vicks on the court right.
They've just come back from the Ukraine war to play.
That's right. They got it there. They've been dismissed from the Army.
All right.
I think they have problems getting NIL money too, John. I'm not sure. They were trying to find a loophole. They're paying them in rubles, I guess. I don't know.
Well, the 2 players I'm going to be looking for next year is at Baylor, this pro that came in and got okayed by the NCAA, to play. See if he's still around. And speaking of the women's Final Four, Texas Tech next year has got a girl on campus already that's 7'2". And
Really?
I have no idea whether she can dribble or chew gum or whatever, but that's the tallest women's player I think I've ever heard of.
I saw her sitting on the
I've seen
bench.
pictures of her. Was she not eligible to play this year?
She was not. They thought
no.
she was going to be, and she, at
Okay.
the last second, they pulled her eligibility this year, so she's getting everything cleared up and going to be able to play next.
Yeah, she came in around Christmas, and they thought they were going to get her able to play, but that just opens up another can of worms that we don't even need to go there. The NCAA clearinghouse, it's a joke. So if a professional can play, I don't know what this girl's problem was.
Is she from the
Yes.
Eastern Ukraine?
No, she didn't bring her combat helmet with her. I think I'm not sure where she's from.
I
Bo.
thought she was from Nigeria, but
Yeah,
I couldn't
I'll
be
have to
wrong.
check.
I'm thinking Africa for some reason.
Probably
Okay.
so.
Man, Bo, the SEC really took it on the head. A lot of people are saying they didn't deserve 10 bids, and they all got eliminated. And, they had 4 still in play going into the Elite 8, didn't they? And they all got beat.
It's
And now, not a one.
like the college football playoff. The Big Ten seems to emerge, but it's Johnny got insider information. AD at one of the prominent SEC schools who asked to be anonymous said, we're going in the next couple of years. We don't care if the Big Ten's go. We'll pick out 28 or 32 teams and break away from everybody and have our own championships, have the Greg Sankey trophy or whatever they want. It's amazing.
Well, how's everybody feel about that? I mean, they've been threatening to do that. I think that, I started weeks ago relaying that conversation that I had with Harvey Schiller back in the late 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, everybody in the Southeast is going to watch that. But as far as, that for the rest of the nation, I mean, it they want to do an NFL. I think they're going to do two things. I think they're going to drive interest in watching their games down, and I think they're going to bankrupt themselves if that's possible eventually.
No, they're not going to bankrupt themselves.
Okay.
No,
Well, I
I
think
think there's
football is going to carry it, and when you talk about viewership, I do understand where you're going with the viewership in the South, but because most of those schools in the Southeast Conference, not all of them, but most of them play in areas that don't have professional teams,
Right.
they get all the eyeballs in those states. They get all of them.
Well, they'll get all the eyeballs now.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's going to create a bigger pie. I mean, they've already got their share, and I don't think the people in California or in Texas or New York are going to care.
Well,
I
I'll
don't
be
know.
surprised if they keep teams like Vanderbilt or
Mississippi
some of the
State.
lower.
Whoa.
No. Hey, they're going to get rid of Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. They might kick Kentucky football out of there. It's been so mediocre. Had to kick their basketball program and kick out football.
Yeah, they want to keep Vandy from a baseball perspective.
Yeah,
so
you
who
never
knows?
know. You never know. It is really cutthroat, as you guys know. It's he who has the goal rules. It's pretty much
That's exactly right.
Does Sourcebo have a time frame that he thought that was going to happen?
He thought in the next 2 or 3 years. And the NCAA such John was referring to that College Sports Commission as like 9 school Nebraska and 8 other schools are suing them because they're trying to get people. They're supposed to deal with all the NIL stuff and make sure that under the table money isn't being, which is that's an impossible task. But they've been holding people's eligibility for like 2 or 3 weeks in different sports. And plus, the guy at Alabama, remember he played, I think, 12 NBA games, played in the G League. He finally just gave up and said he was going to just go back to
the G
European
League,
ball
right.
or something. Yeah.
Well, another point that was very interesting to follow during the basketball tournament, it looks like the older coaches still can coach pretty well. You know, everybody was talking about, well, the new wave is the young coaches, and these guys, older coaches, aren't going to be able to deal with the NIL and some of these other things. But at one point, I think half of the coaches that were still alive were over 65, several over 70. And I think that Rick Pitino just signed a new 2-year contract extension.
Yeah, I think one of the things there, John, is almost all these programs have general managers to help deal with the nil and to deal with all the other little ins and outs and let the coaches coach like they've always done. And that's going to really play well for the old guys, us old guys. I'm old.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, Coach, but the point you're getting at was relayed to me. Well, when I visited with Mark Adams, the assistant coach at Ole Miss, 2 years ago, I was there, and we spent the whole day together, really had a good time. But he was saying the reason he likes his job is he doesn't have to screw around with recruiting at all.
Exactly.
That other people are doing that for him or for the coaches. You know, other people are doing it. And there was a day, you know, when if you were a recruiter, you had to do everything from call the school crossing guard to call the librarian, you know, once a week to make sure you had a good rapport with that kid and his clique and whatnot. Where now it's simply a matter of let's go up to the bargaining table and see how much money's there. You know, where you really don't need that great rapport. It's all about money. Therefore, he had to get involved. He doesn't have to get involved in it, but it does make me wonder about one thing. You know, if you're the head coach of Ole Miss or Kentucky or Florida, surely you want the players that you think you can win with. So, you know, I would think somehow or another you'd have to get involved in recruiting, at least to the standpoint of, you know, telling the general manager, okay, we'll pay this guy whatever he wants. Just get him here.
Well, I feel that part of the problem that we're going to see is lack of chemistry. That to me, Coach K, is overlooked when you talk about everybody just playing for the money. You got to get players that are willing to play for themselves and understand their roles too. And I don't know if that's going to continue with the big money or not. What do you think?
I kind of see that coming into play because the fact is, you know, there's greed is going to come in and it's going to show me the money. It's going to become the byword of the nil right now. And loyalty is something of a thing of the past. I think you're going to see, why are all these players who are having success and the programs are having success, why are they jumping into the portal to try to, the only one reason, to make more money.
Right.
They're already having success. They're getting playing time. They're making money. They just want more. And I am really concerned about the fate of college athletics, because when you get to a point where greed is the only driving, motivating factor, it loses all its appeal.
And that was my point. I'm not piling on the SEC, Bo, but that's my point. I mean, if all they're after is money, I think that money proved in basketball that you can't buy championships.
Right.
It gives you a leg up, but you can't buy championships.
Hey, I was curious about.
I'll tell you what, I think John Wooden and UCLA and was his name Sam Walton, their super booster. I mean, they just proved that because they bought the best players that were out there, and they won an awful lot of games with them.
But they didn't win every year. Go ahead, Lee.
I just want to go back to asking Bo about that SEC thing, about if they really break away, all the teams that are in there. The most ludicrous thing I heard in the tournament was that Texas was a Cinderella, and I was thinking, I was thinking they had more money than anybody in the Man on the Moon.
I was just,
and nobody has. There really isn't, with all the big conferences this year, especially. There was no Cinderella. So I can see them adding more teams, but they have all got money. I mean, that can't be a problem for any of them.
just in Ohio State are the classic examples. They've tried to throw money at everything.
Yeah.
They won 17 NCAA men's swimming championships. I guess that's where
you look at
different sport, but Babe Ruth a long time ago said you can throw as much money as you want at players and build the best players at every position, but if they can't play together, your club's not worth a dime.
It gets back to your chemistry comment, Tom. I mean, that's one thing that I think Texas Tech did a good job of this past year. All the players that they brought in football meshed together and played well together. But that's not going to be the case every year, and it's not going to be a case just because people throw a lot of money at it. As we all know, you ought to know at Texas A&M, they've been throwing more money than Gump at football forever. And, all they've got is now, if their coach doesn't work out this time, they'll be over $100 million in debt. So it's pretty crazy.
One thing of all people, I saw a comment Barry Switzer made about the state of college athletics. Switzer's a pretty sharp guy, and he just was saying how it's gotten to the point of being absolutely ridiculous, because he said he is not against any player making all the money he can.
Right.
But with this whole deal where they can transfer out whenever they want and, everything. And he even brought up this point. He said, nobody mentions academics anymore.
That's exactly right.
And that's because these players are all doing their stuff online.
No.
And who knows if they're even doing it. It's probably some paid tutor doing it.
There's no doubt.
Well, we've got institutions of higher learning, supposedly, and I've never seen academians be so stupid in that they have let the NFL basically turn their college programs into their farm clubs. The winner in this whole scenario are the owners of the NFL teams, because they will never have to set up their own minor leagues like baseball and even basketball now has. And, these colleges are just, I think you'll eventually just split off. You'll have the top 64 or whatever, they end up with, and the rest of the birds will be feeding out of the other, bird feeder that doesn't have as much seed in it.
I hate to bring up.
Doesn't college baseball have a rule where you have to play, not necessarily for the same team, but you have to play for 2 years before
you have to play
go?
for 2 years, and then you can sign. Yes.
Do you ever see anything like that coming up in the NBA or NFL?
Yeah, they tried it in the NBA, and then, of course, lawsuits hit, and they all said, hey, it's one and done is all you need now.
I hate to bring up a politician in the middle of all this argument, but what does everybody think of Tommy Tuberville's latest proposal?
Well, here's why it's being met with deaf ears, Lee.
I haven't seen one positive response to it yet.
But I've made this point, and I'll make it again as quick as I can, because it probably reiterates being made. But I remember when I first got out of college and I was first covering college athletics for a newspaper in Oklahoma City and whatnot. And I remember I must have been a fairly sharp little guy, because I remember making the statement or looking around and saying, why is it okay for Barry Switzer and Lou Holtz to make six-figure salaries off of all this stuff, but the players can only get room, board, and tuition? Why is it okay for Jimmy Johnson and Jackie Sherrill to just up and leave in the middle of the night for a better deal, but the players got a transfer process they got to go through and whatnot? And it really wasn't. I mean, slavery's great if you're the slave owner, but other than that, it's not too good. But anyhow, I felt these college athletes forever got taken advantage like that, where the coaches could do that what they want. Now, Lee, getting back to Tuberville. Okay, Tubbs has a good idea, but Tubbs probably wasn't the guy to put it forth, because he's talking about, they got one opportunity to transfer and then you got to sit out a year. Well, what about Tubbs? He walked out on two schools.
Yeah.
He walked out on Ole Miss and he
Exactly
walked
right.
out on Texas Tech.
Yeah.
I mean, why is it okay for him to do that, but the players can't do it?
And he didn't even wait for the pine box.
Yeah.
For some reason, it brings up a classic movie line. The plant is still the plant, even though it doesn't say plantation. Like you said, Bo, those with the gold, make the rules, and
absolutely.
the rules may not be good, but they still get to make them. And that's why I'm sort of pessimistic with any group of schools if they break off and they just play each other all the time. And they think that's going to be a model for everybody around the U.S. to watch. All right, guys, let's move on to college baseball. Bo, would you ever consider in the past that Boston College, West Virginia, and Nebraska are going to be in the top 20 of baseball? I guess you can say that the changes for the northern schools have paid off.
And how about Jacksonville State moving on? They moved up to Division I about 4 or 5 years in the poll for the first time in 29 years. It's really the whole thing. Like I said, I think NIL and the revenue sharing thing have even the playing field a good bit in baseball. Another anonymous coach said in the SEC, as a matter of fact, told a good friend that his school had $750,000 in NIL money in him in Texas for baseball only. The $8 to $10 million range. How do you recruit against that? And real quickly, on the same point that Coach and Tom were making a minute ago, if you get a 32-team standalone SEC, you're going to have a lot of 7 and 5 and 6 and 6 teams. They're going to be, Coach can't win the national championship. We're going to win the 6 games a year.
Exactly.
We don't want to keep this guy. Let's pay him off and have the $85 million in dead money like LSU has right now.
Or how about Hubert Davis? I read the other day that it is going to end up costing North Carolina $50 million between buying out Hubert Davis, buying out his whole staff, and then buying out the contract of whatever coach they're going to hire there.
That's
so,
right.
I mean, I'm glad somebody in North Carolina has that kind of money, but it's pretty ridiculous, I think.
Crazy.
That's
Crazy.
absolutely.
But particularly Hubert Davis, 5 years ago, he was playing for the national championship against Kansas, and now they're running him out of town. So, and it's not like he's had a lot of mediocre seasons. He's won over 20 games every year he's been there. But, as I think I've said before, if Queen Jezebel wants you dead, no man alive can save you. And that's what it amounts to.
Absolutely.
Lee, can you interpret that comment for us?
Queen Jezebel.
I've heard a lot of Kevin comments like that over the years.
Yeah.
I was curious about the college baseball. I watched a couple of games. I watched some of the West Virginia game that was on the TV the other night, and I got the SEC networks. I've been watching some of those games, but caliber of baseball certainly is a lot better than it used to be. I can say that for sure. But man, those guys they get pretty good crowds. I know they can't make any money college baseball. There's no way they can make any money, but they're going to keep playing as long as they can. It's, unlike some sports, like I saw the other day where one of the men's gymnastics, at one time there were 200 teams. Now there are 12 in the country.
Yeah,
and there was some other sport that was the same way.
It's getting
Water polo.
too. Water polo.
Well, those are the kind of sports. Can you imagine Cal Berkeley going with all the Olympic sports they had? They were a perfect example. What are they in now? The ACC, they got to go play on the East Coast. Are they going to drag the water polo team or the tennis team? or the golf
Well,
team.
At one time, they were talking about playing all the Olympic sports halfway, like doing them
In
all in
Dallas.
Dallas,
Yeah.
which made a lot of sense, but they never did that. And I know I'm going to sound like a knuckle dragger here. Okay. I'm not. I am for women's sports 100%. But the real, where the rubber meets the road is you have to pay for yourself. And
Yeah.
Bo, we can tell stories back when Jody Conrad was at Texas and Chris Plonsky was the SID for women's sports. I remember going to an SID convention and Chris was doing a table topic that I sat down on, and there were like probably about 6 or 8 people around her table, and she was explaining to everybody else on how you need to do this on your media guides. And she was printing media guides back then that probably cost $50,000.
Right.
And
right.
and everybody at the table were turning and looking at each other going, what the hell are you talking about? We're lucky if we can, have a something on a napkin, and you're talking about $50,000 media guides. And the thing that they didn't do then and they don't do now is that they don't work within their means. And what I mean by that, you can spend what you make, and they don't make anything. Now, I'm sure there's a women's program out there and a men's Olympic sport out there. At some colleges got to make a little bit of money, but to be the University of Texas, the way they upgraded their women's athletic program, when Jody Conrad came in, it wasn't the athletic budget that was paying for that. They got a special $1 million gift from the president's office.
Yeah.
And so I just don't know whether they're existing on booster funds or whatever, but I know that none of those programs, male or female, except football, are making money. And I just don't understand how it can continue that way.
I know you're right.
Well, it's going to continue, though, John. You're right. None of them are. But, you made the statement about you back women's athletics 100%. Well, I'm going to bring up a few names here Lee will immediately recognize. I remember when I first started in Amarillo, we had a great football player from Sanford Fritch named Eddie Cunningham, who was being recruited by literally everybody from Notre Dame to Oklahoma to Texas. He ended up going to Texas. And we had a girl basketball player named Amy Claiborne, who was being recruited pretty much by, I don't think she was being recruited nationally by people all over the country, but she had her opportunities to go anywhere in the Southwest Conference. And I remember saying to myself, why is it okay for Eddie to get a scholarship and go play in college, but not okay for Amy? Why
Right.
shouldn't Amy have the same opportunities? So the point I'm getting at is I've always supported women's athletics. I think things, are a little out of hand, and I think, what they're demanding is. And now I've heard all kinds of stories over the years, about women's athletics demanding this and demanding that. And to me, it's ridiculous when they make absolutely no money, but they still demand everything.
Well,
So
exactly.
there was
That's
that
my
young
point.
lady from West Texas, Aaliyah Sanchez, I believe it was, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
The girl from Lubbock.
the girl from Lubbock.
She's at OU.
I happened to be in the airport when she was getting heavily recruited, and there must have been 15 coaches from across the country, all the big programs. And I happened to visit with all of them. That none of them wanted to talk, on the record, so to speak, but they were all talking about going out there. And the money that they had to spend with the travel and the hotel
Yeah.
stays and everything else, just going to get this one young lady. I think she wound up in Oklahoma. I think she's in
did.
Oklahoma, right?
She got her $1 million.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that program's going to make that kind of money.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Well, Bo, the schools that I brought up about in college baseball, how is Boston College in the top 20? And West Virginia's built a nice little program. I think they really took the challenge head on when they got in the Big 12. But, Nebraska has not done much in baseball, for many, many years. They aspire to be a power because they're right there where the College World Series, is. But, Creighton actually is a better program overall than they've been.
They really
How
don't.
do those teams compete?
That's a great point. And to John's point too, one thing, Rutgers is 70 on pay. I mean, and publicly, Rutgers Athletics $75 million in the hole. And the president said, we got to carve like $15 million a year out of this for 5 years and win football. I mean, how can they do it? And also the other classic example, and this happens with a lot of baseball, LSU's women's program's $8 million in the hole on paper, right, publicly. And Kim Mulkey's making $3.5 million a year. So how do you? It's just the ends and the means are totally scrambled.
Yeah, and look what they're wasting on all the coaches that they fired. At least they brought one back that they owed money to. I guess maybe that's going to be the new trend in the future. Hire the person you bought out to come back.
And-
Well, let's talk a little bit about softball, Tom. It looks like it's shaping up to be UT, Tech, OU, and Nebraska again in the Final Four. And but UT and Tech have been 1-2. One or the other's been number one all year.
I agree, and we talked a little bit about it last week with what was it, OU just hitting all those home runs. Those four teams are head and shoulders, I think, above the rest of the field. I think it's going to be a real interesting College World Series this year. We're assuming all those teams get out of the brackets. When you get into regional play, anything can happen. But I will tell you, those four teams that you mentioned, John, are absolutely the class. I don't know. Tech has some good pitching this year, so
They went out and got him a second pitcher.
yes.
Mhm.
If you remember, they rode Kennedy all the way
And
last
she
year.
just ran out of gas in
And
the
she
last
ran
inning.
out of gas, so they went out and got another really good pitcher. I think that's what's going to put them over the top.
I think Tech's had 2 no-hitters already this year.
I think
Yeah,
so.
something like that.
she's thrown 2 this
Yeah.
year. I think
Yeah.
she's got 3 in her career.
Yeah, and so it's going to be a fun ride. College softball is a lot of fun to watch. Coach K and I talked about that last week. It's a great game to watch, and it's exciting. But to all of our points, I don't know that it's making the money that it needs to.
Well, I don't think it makes the money, but it's fun to watch because it's a very fast paced.
Right.
There's little downtime at all. I mean, the fact is they just don't go through all the mechanizations that we see in men's sports in a way. Right now, the cream's kind of there. Texas Tech, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Alabama. Alabama looked good the other day. I watched them against Oklahoma. Nebraska is going to be good. They've got 2 great pitchers that are going to keep them in any game. And so it's fun to watch. It's not a great, but it's making a lot more money than it used to.
Yes.
I mean, there's not an empty seat in that stadium in Oklahoma City when that championship game or the championships are being played. I mean, and I think it's a lot of it regional. You got regional teams, Texas Tech, that are playing there. So, but it's a big draw. I mean, I lived there most of my life, and that was a prime ticket. You couldn't
And you
get
see
one of
the
those.
same thing in Omaha with college baseball. I mean, I've been up there a handful of times, probably 4 or 5. I know Bo and John, you guys have been up there innumerable amount of times. But it seems like it was always crowded, always packed. I'm sure it was at Rosenblatt, too.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
Bo, to me, it really hit its peak the last year or two of Rosenblatt. It's a bigger stadium. It's a little bit more corporate. You may like it, but, I just don't feel like it's the same. But they're not selling out like they did at Rosenblatt all the time.
No, it'll kind of lost some of the ambiance, just like you're saying. It's downtown, your typical, AAA or small Major League Baseball. And it's it's really nice facility.
It's
Better
really
concession
nice.
stands, better bratwurst than the old than the old place used to have. But I don't know. It's something. It's a little bit too sterile, or so. I don't know, to be honest. For growing up there for years.
Yeah, it's just like any other, like Bo's saying, it's just like almost any pro park that you're going to visit. And the old stadium, John, you took me up there, and I still got my little notebook from there and everything. Use that all the time. And I used that as my coaching notebook, and it's just kind of lost. The old park, it's had some, the flaws, roof falling in. I mean, things up on the press box, but just doesn't have the feel
Well,
that you have. That's why I like the old Yankee Stadium, Wrigley Field.
Fenway.
I
Those
went
are
to
the
the
stadiums.
old Yankee Stadium the year before they tore it down. It was
I did, too.
pretty much of a dump, and I
Yeah,
can
it was. I mean,
understand why they wanted a new stadium, but
I
again, it just doesn't have the ambiance that the old one had.
and the smell, the feel, I don't know what you can call it, but, I was there in the Yankee Stadium. They played Minnesota with 15 games to go before they tore it down.
Right.
John, even
And you're
from a
right,
Houston
seats were
perspective,
rusting. Seats were rusting. Everything was in need of repair. But man, I took my grandson, and that was a great day. That was a fantastic day.
does it have the same feel to you, John, at Minute Maid or whatever it's called, Dakin Park now,
Well,
as it
actually,
did
yeah,
at the
actually,
Dome?
I like Minute Maid, Dakin, whatever. Actually, just as a baseball stadium, I like it better than the Astrodome. But don't get me started on the Astrodome. I mean,
Yeah, that's a shame.
it's a scandal what they're doing. It's another project that politicians will not address and just kick it down the road. And I think now that the Astrodome has been designated a National Historical Landmark and a couple of other things, I'm not so sure that they could tear it down now. But I will just say this: if they ever say that they're going to tear it down, I will be soon to be single again, because I know my wife has said she will go out there and chain herself to the gate around the demolition team, and I might join her. I'll just say that, because it's a scandal. They should do something, and they're always constantly talking about expanding space for the rodeo and for the NFL events, and they've got that right next door to the NRG stadium. I don't know why they don't do something with it, but this could go on for hours. Let's shift to Major League Baseball. I've got 4 topics that I want to talk about, and let's just go ahead and get this one out in the open, because it's going to have a lot of discussion on this. Let me tell you, after Carlos Beltran and Jeff Kent got elected to the Hall of Fame, I want to know, why in the hell is Pete Rose not in the Hall of Fame? And as far as it goes, you might as well put Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens in too, because if you're going to elect cheaters, and Carlos Beltran is a cheater who lost his job as manager of the New York Mets over it. That wouldn't have happened if he hadn't have been guilty. So if they're letting people like that into the Hall of Fame, why is Pete Rose not there instantly? Sponsored by DraftKings.
You're absolutely 100% right, and it's run by a group that makes no sense. You're talking about a sport that your all-time home run king, your all-time hit king, your all-time Cy Young Award winner king aren't in the Hall of Fame. And I mean, you can go all the way back to Joe Jackson, Shoeless Joe Jackson. Why is
he ought to be in. That ought to be the next class.
Yeah. And on the flip side, you have Mickey Mantle, Ty Cobb, Babe Ruth, Willie Mays. They were all had scrapes with the law as far as gambling, womanizing, fights, things like that.
Drinking, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's a laundry list of hypocrisy that goes all the way back to the beginnings of baseball. And it's a great question, John. I mean, I've never been a Barry Bonds fan, but how is he not in the Hall of Fame if you're going to let somebody like Carlos Beltran? If you're going to make the principle that you can't be in because you're a cheater, then there needs to be a major overhaul.
This class that they announced, that was it for me. I mean, before that, I could say, well, all right, but not now, not with this class that's elected. If you remember, when Jeff Kent was here, he didn't really ever get along with a lot of his teammates, either at San Francisco or Houston. And supposedly it was because he had this giant collection of pornography that he would bring out in the locker room, and guys were just turned off by that. Now, I don't know if that's true, that is rumored, and you're innocent until you're convicted guilty or whatever. But I'm just saying that if we've got guys like this in the Hall of Fame, all rules are gone. All holes are off.
I got to tell you, I know a guy who played with him in Chattanooga, and he said he was not a very nice person.
You talking about Kent?
Yeah. He
Well,
played double A ball with him at Chattanooga.
Right.
And so,
Look out.
I don't know that that qualifies you not to be a Hall of Famer, but when you have the numbers, you should be in the Hall of Fame regardless. What
Well,
I
yeah,
find
I mean,
weird
Ty
is,
Cobb was not a particularly nice man either. So,
Well,
But yeah, if you were to believe his biography and the stuff that was written about him, and also the movie about Ty Cobb, the guy was like psycho or something. You know,
well,
it's just unbelievable.
what I find ironic is Bud Selig, who was the MLB commissioner during the supposed steroid era. He's in
Right.
the Hall of Fame, and he knew what was going on, and he let it go on because,
Right.
chicks dig the long ball.
Well,
baseball didn't cry and they didn't give any money back to the fans when McGuire and Sosa saved baseball. They
Yeah.
sure didn't. They didn't make any apologies for that. And then quietly they're like, "Oh, okay, they're steroids. Let's keep them out of the Hall of Fame."
I've said this before. I was living in San Francisco back in the late 80s, and I became an Oakland A's fan when I moved out there. And we didn't know what we were looking at. We knew something was different. When the second baseman who'd hit maybe one home run in his career is hitting 15 homers a year and built, looks like Popeye now all of a sudden. We didn't really know what was going on, but that was ground zero of the steroids era. And both Tony La Russa and Sandy Alderson profited by that. They, went on. La Russa, coached 4 more teams after that. Alderson is in the office, the Major League Baseball office, and they profited by that. And they should have been some of the first ones that were banned.
100%.
John, one thing about that era, I'll always find amusing. The FBI knew darn good and well that not Sammy Sosa, but Mark McGuire and Barry Bonds were using steroids long before it came out because they were, I guess you'd say, guys who were selling steroids.
Right.
And these guys' favorite customers are Mark McGuire. So they knew several years before it became known that McGuire and Sosa and Barry Bonds were into steroids, and they did nothing about it. Now, they did nothing about it because, like I said, they were concerning themselves with the sellers, not the buyers.
Right.
They knew long before anybody else did that, Mark McGuire was juicing, so to speak.
Well, all you had to do is look at Barry Bonds' head, and it was about twice the size as it was when he was in Pittsburgh. And so that gets me back to the same question. Does Pete Rose belong in the Hall of Fame? Everybody raise your hand if you agree. Man, I'm telling you, it's really the upper echelon of the hypocrisy now.
Well, I didn't raise my hand for this reason, I guess. A guy I work for in Alabama, strong media background, his brother was the beat writer for the Cincinnati Reds, for the Cincinnati Enquirer, one of those major papers, when Rose was playing. And this guy claimed Rose was a lousy excuse for a human being you could ever meet.
Agreed. I don't think everything I've ever seen pretty much says that, but he was a hell of a baseball player.
Well, does that disqualify you as what you do on the field? I don't know.
I think it has to be what you do on the field and what you do off the field are separated, and that's just the way it should be.
Yeah, I don't know that Mickey Mantle was a particularly wonderful guy, certainly not to his wife as far as womanizing and doing all kinds of things. I mean, and those are some of the heartthrobs of baseball. And you say names like that, nobody's going to argue that Mickey Mantle shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. And I don't know, to your point, John, where you draw that line. But they definitely crossed it by letting Beltran in. They definitely did.
Bo, what about your Cardinals? I'm sure you've got some stories that really aren't commonly known about your favorite team there.
Like you said with Kevin, and I apologize, I got to jump off here for some baseball writers. So, but they sort of dismissed McGuire and everybody else. And just like Tom said, home runs saved the game. The Cardinals have been floundering for a few years, and all of a sudden they had something they could hang their hat on, roided up.
My all-time favorite, I guess you would say, remark during that era came when Rafael Palmeiro got up before Congress and said, "I have never taken steroids and never doing steroids." And then 10 days later, he tested positive for steroids.
Exactly.
Don't you remember, John, the picture of Mark McGuire standing in front of his locker, and behind him is a can of creatine?
Yes.
It was there blatantly. I
Yes.
mean, like he was taking it, and no one asked him what it was or what it did or anything. It was just
But
there.
I think he did the creatine to throw everybody off the scent.
Well, he may have, but it's still just the idea that, there's what else was he taking? He's going to take anything he can.
Well, but like I said, think the creatine was put there on purpose to let everybody see that he was doing creatine, which wasn't very god awful at the time. It might be a bit of a muscle enhancer, but nothing like steroids. But, where he could say he developed this massive bulk by using his creatine and lifting a lot of weights and that kind of stuff.
Let me move on to a second point that I wanted to sort of touch on this week is it's turned out to be man versus machine. What do you guys think about this computerized strike zone? We've already had 2 managers have a meltdown when they didn't get calls going their way. I guess that'll never change. But I know that Alex Cora with the Red Sox, and I think it was the Twins manager.
Yeah.
Boy, the Twins manager had an episode to where the bases were loaded and the tying run, I believe, was on third base, and it was a full count, and he got the umpire calls it a ball, and then the automatic strike zone calls it a strike, and that ended the ball game, and he went berserk.
You kind of look at what happened in one of the games. C.B. Buckner, umpire,
Yes.
a veteran umpire.
Yes.
He had 6 calls overturned in one game, and two of them played very much into the outcome of that game. Robo-ump, is you got that 1 second or 2 seconds to make your decision to challenge. Players are doing it, and they're being successful. So
I think 70% of the fans say that they like it.
I like it because the fact it takes, I wouldn't mind them, and I'm an old baseball way back when, but, things have changed in baseball. Every year there are new things happening.
Right.
And this is just one of the things that's there. Technology, like you said, if it's working, great. It takes that human error out of the game. We have the instant replays now on calls at first base. Every game I've watched, there's been 2 or 3 overturns on base running situation. So I think it's here to stay, and I think it's a good thing.
I'm a baseball purist, and I have been my whole life. Don't even get me started on how I feel that baseball is a game not meant to be timed, and all of the rules that they have done going back to 1973 with the designated hitter has been to speed up the game. And I think the beauty of baseball is that it's not timed. And I know so many people with ADHD, I guess, can't stand to watch a baseball game because it takes a long time.
Well,
but it doesn't
a 4-hour
matter to me
game is
because
where
to
it was
me,
headed, and I don't think
it
anybody
is where it's
wants
headed because it's all about this. It's all about
No, it was headed that way before all these other advances you were talking about came in. I don't think anybody wants to see a 4-hour baseball game. And I'm as big a baseball fan as you are, and it had gotten out of hand. And, I know exactly why the game have gotten longer. Television.
Yeah.
well, absolutely
And selling
television, yeah.
advertising. And if
Yeah.
they trim the amount of advertising in a televised game, they quicken them like overnight, but they're not going to do that.
Especially now that they're wearing ads on their uniforms and
Yeah.
everything else too.
It's
I mean,
NASCAR at the ballpark.
it's all commercialized. It's all commercialized, and I don't know. I can go just down all of the rules that they've passed that I just can't stand. I can't stand the automatic walk if you want to intentionally walk somebody. I can't stand they call it a ghost runner, although it's not a ghost runner rule in the extra innings.
Yeah, that's one
I
of
mean
the worst.
that's idiotic. I mean that's something you did in the playground. You don't do that in Major League Baseball to decide a Major League game. That's ridiculous. Limiting the amount of trips to talk to a pitcher. All of these things.
Well, they've been tinkering with the game. Coach K, you can tell them, let's go back to lowering the mound, after the pitchers had dominated in 68. They've been tinkering around with stuff. for years, and I don't know that any of this stuff really works. Like I said, if you want to shorten a baseball game, I know exactly how to do it tomorrow, but they're not going to get off the advertising.
Yeah. Proposing to, shorten the distance between first and second right now to make it into more of a pure diamond, because of they enlarged first base, they made it bigger. So now, but they want to bring second base in like 8 inches.
Wow.
I mean, there are like 4 or 5 proposed. Oh yeah, there are 4 or 5 proposals that they're trying out in AAA this year. That one I think like,
Well,
how are you going to do that?
Skip
It's
Bertman would not
128 feet.
tolerate that.
It's 128 feet 3 inches from home plate to second. Okay, it's been that way forever. Why you want to change it? It's 60 feet 6 inches from the mound to home plate, 17 inches wide. Why do you want to change that? I mean, being an old baseball coach and player, I mean, I know the dimensions. I laid out a many a field. It's crazy. I mean, but some of the stuff I like, and Tom's right. It's a lot about money. And John, you're right. It's about speeding the game up. And nobody wants to watch and sit and watch a 4-hour
That's the
game.
unfortunate thing, because to me, that's the pastoral pleasure of baseball, is that it's not timed. When I watch a football game or a basketball game or a hockey game or a soccer game, I expect it
You
to be
need to
timed.
watch a soccer game and tell me when the game is over. Tell me
you
when
can
a
usually
soccer
watch a
game is
soccer game
over.
within an hour and a half.
You can't tell me when a soccer game is over, because it's never over. It goes on forever.
The official has the ability to add extra minutes. I know where you're coming from, but I mean, come on. Those are all timed games, and they're meant to be timed. Baseball was never meant to be timed.
No.
All right, let's touch on another change that I certainly am for. Did you guys read a column that Bob Costas had written about having your local announcers on the national games of the week? Now that NBC is back doing a national game of the week, it was just sort of a subject that brought it up again, that he thinks that whenever the playoffs are, start, and if you watch it, it's always John Smoltz and Davis, doing the national game, and the fans of the local teams that have had their local announcers all year are suddenly hearing strange voices that don't know anything about their clubs. And what Costas is proposing is you at least to have one local announcer, from each team sitting in on the national broadcast. And I'd be for that.
I love that idea. I think it's a beautiful idea, and it goes back to the nature of the beauty of the sport of baseball. I think it's a fantastic idea.
I'm a knuckle dragger when it comes to ABS. I'm out.
You don't like it?
No, I'm out. I of all the changes they've made in baseball the last few years, the only one I like, and again, it's going to talk about speeding up the game, is I have to admit, I go to a lot of minor league baseball games.
Right.
And, they're no different than the major leagues. They drag out, pitching changes and so forth. The pitch clock is okay.
Right.
I got to say.
Yes.
But I'm not big on the ghost runner. I'm not big on, in the minor leagues, it's the same thing. You can't have the shortstop on the second base side of second.
Right.
They tried that in Double-A, because I watched it all one summer going, why is that guy not over there? He can't be over there. That kind of stuff.
Well, and I hate that too. If I'm the coach and I want to put all my players standing on first base, that's my business. If you're the opposing coach, teach your players to hit to the opposite field. I mean, I don't know. I think they've ruined a beautiful game.
When you see a pitch call a ball and they challenge it, and it's like 0.08 inches off of the plate.
Yeah, I saw one like that last night. Yes, it's pretty funny.
Ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
There's no,
I get it. I get it if it's a foot off the plate. There's some of those bad calls, but
2
those
millimeters.
Are egregious. Yeah,
Yes.
millimeters. I mean, it's like why are we wasting our time doing that? That's my
But
opinion.
it's something that's infiltrated all sports. I mean, we're seeing it in college basketball, with who last touched it or who, and I mean, for years we survived without that. And that was part of the mystique of sports, is that you could talk about, oh gosh, he touched it or he didn't touch it or whatever. I mean, I'm still mad about when Texas Tech was in the finals in basketball. If you remember, they had the 1-point lead and they had the ball, and David Moretti got the ball tipped, and they originally were going to give it to Tech, and Tech would have won the game. But instead, they went to the replay and they said, oh, he hit it and it tipped his fingertip and went out. So Virginia got the ball, and you know what happened then? They nailed that three-pointer and they win.
You don't hold a grudge much, do you?
I hold a grudge big time.
I got to tell you, John, this is going to probably sound strange, but for the last 6 or 7 years, right before COVID hit, or a couple of years before COVID hit, and even since then, I have some service on my TV. I watch Japanese baseball. I watched one today. And they're on every day, 5 o'clock in the morning. They replay them in the afternoon. But when I first started watching it, they didn't have a replay. And then when they had replay, the umpires literally left the field, went under the stands, and went into a room to look at the play. And then they would all come out, and one guy would say, safe or out. And that's how they did it. And now they used to go to a TV screen behind home plate and look at the play there and make the call. It was really weird. That when they first got it, but they didn't have it for the longest time. I think they got forced into it like everybody else. And now they're like everyone else. They don't have ABS, but they do have a replay.
Well, along the same lines, did you see what the NFL announced today? That if they have these replacement refs, they're going to actually make calls from the booth.
Well, they will approve the calls. Yeah, I was going to touch on that next. Both the NCAA and the NFL came out with a couple of rules changes. And most of the rule changes in the NFL time had to do with kickoffs and that area of the ball game. But I noticed that they were going to allow another person, I guess in New York at the TV studio, to override some of the decisions made by the field judge.
Well, and being an official, having been one for 20 years in high school and college football, I can tell you it's unappreciated. You're expected to be perfect. And now everything is done on camera. It exacerbates every situation. We're expected to make a decision just like that, and it has to be perfect. In a sport like football, where the difference between what's holding and what's not is very subjective. And to me, I only called holding if it was pertinent to the play, if the play went behind the hold, or if it was a dangerous situation, if it was a safety situation, if some guy was pile driving somebody or something. If there was somebody grabbed a shirt or something on the backside of a play that was going the other way, I'm not going to call that. And I'm not going to call it if the defensive player's going, oh, I'm being held, you're not even making an effort to get out of it, So it's very frustrating because I remember doing a game that was televised and I got lambasted for not making a hold call or something on one of the plays, and it was crazy.
You're famous, huh?
Oh yeah, for not the right reason.
Well, how about Tom? How about pass interference? They
Right.
could call about every play if they wanted to.
Absolutely. You're 100% right, Kevin. And it could go either way too. It could go either way.
Well, let's hear from a coach on this. Coach?
Well, I wanted to get it right, but I don't want the game to drag out. Every play being challenged or every pitch.
Yeah.
There's a human part to the game, and part of the human part is officiating. I officiated basketball for 10 years, and I can appreciate what Tom's saying. It's split second. Did the guy was he set? Did he have position, or was it a block
it a charge
or charge?
or was it a
Hardest
was it a
thing to
block?
call in basketball,
Yeah,
block or
yeah.
charge.
It's the same thing.
Verticality is pretty easy, things like that. But man, I like something. I like the ability to challenge in specific situations, I guess, especially some of the no calls that we had last year in the playoffs, in the NFL playoffs, kind of spoiled a little of it. So, but I like the human. It's always been that way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad there was these two managers going berserk. That brought color back to the game for me. I thought it was great.
I like a good rhubarb.
I miss
rhubarb.
the manager. I miss Earl Weaver,
I love a good rhubarb in baseball. I love a good rhubarb in
stepping
any of
in to
it.
protect his player.
But as an official, let me ask you guys this. As a fan of the game, whatever game it is, basketball, football, baseball, and you're watching it, would you rather a game be adjudicated to the nth degree, or would you rather, for the most part, as they say, let them play? Call egregious fouls, right? Call egregious fouls, but would you rather see something? I mean, in football, I could throw a flag every play. I literally could throw a flag every play, and we'd be there all night. Is that what fans want?
I think the best games are when you don't even know that they're there.
I agree completely.
It doesn't happen very often.
But Kevin, when you're talking about basketball, would you rather watch a game where they're calling every single touch and the players are fouling out in the third quarter or at the beginning of the second half? Or, I mean, is that what you want?
No, and I can remember, hand checking. For example, I remember hand checking in the NBA at one time was getting out of control. And I remember, some of our guys on the high school level were starting to do that and getting called for it. And, their argument was, well, how come we watch the NBA and they do it there? And our coach said, listen, you got people paying top dollar to see these games. They don't want to see a foul called every time Willis Reed walks up to Wilt Chamberlain and says hi.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think you're right there.
Yeah. Coach K, what do you say? I mean, you were on the other end with the coach. You're wanting calls to go your way, but by the same token, you don't want something to slow the game down and take the rhythm of the game out.
No, I mean, that's why you like the human aspect of it. The fact is, you're right. You could call a foul every play, a hand check, a bump, it could happen. That would there's no rhythm. There's no fluid motion to the game.
And in football, I know you get where you might know you made a mistake. As an official, sometimes you'll be like, oh, God, I blew that one, And I would be the first one to go over to the coach, and I would say, Coach, I blew that one. I messed that one up. I'm sorry. It is what it is. I'd give a coach 3 plays to yell and scream and everything. And I'd tell him, you got 3 plays to yell and scream at me. And then after that, I'm going to throw another flag.
Well, did either of you all happen to see what Kim Mulkey did at one point in the tournament this year? I mean, where she literally looked over at a ref and said, hey, you, get over here.
I did see something about that, Kevin. I saw where they demanded that the coach and that referee ran right over.
Yeah, and in other words, I don't know what kind of pressure there is on those referees, but I'd have quickly told I'd have told Mulkey, I don't care how many national championships you won, you're not going to talk to me that way. End of story. Now, having said that, it's easier for me to sit right here and say that because a good friend of mine, whom Lee knows, made it very, very big in college basketball refereeing. And this guy, and I'm not going to say his name, Lee, I'll call you later and tell you if you want to know, but and you might even be able to figure it out. But when he was getting started, the way he got started back in the 80s when he was there, you first started with the women and then you elevated into the men. Well, he told me Jody Conrad tore him up one side and down the other, and he should have called her for all kinds of technicals, but he didn't because he was concerned about the clout Jody Conrad had and that she might be able to keep him from being a ref. And so, like I said, it's easy for me to sit here and say, I'd have told Kim Mulkey to go fly a kite, but you don't know the pressure that ref was under.
You're right. You're right.
All right, let's head to the end of this one. One subject, I've got a couple that I'd like to at least touch on. How about Gary Woodland winning the Texas Children's Hospital Houston Open? First championship that he'd won in 5 years after a surgery for a brain tumor. He came out just last week and said he was suffering from PTSD. And so it's his first win, real win since the 2000 and the 19 U.S. Open. So Gary Woodland looks like he's well on his way to having a good career again and on the way to recovery.
And that's one of those feel-good stories that you have to love.
He's got a note to West Texas A&M. He was a basketball player at Washburn, Division II. He played 1 year before he went to Kansas to take up golf, and he played West Texas A&M in a Division II regional in Canyon the year he was a freshman. And yeah, somebody dug up the box score here in a newspaper one time and said, hey, after he'd won the Open, said he, about 10 years earlier, he was playing basketball in Canyon, Texas. So quite a change. I'm glad to see him win.
Yeah, you can only send, best wishes to somebody who has come back from those kind of odds. One other thing I'd like to point out is that we are on the verge of having the Houston Comets again. I don't know if you guys saw this, but
I did not hear that.
Fertitta, the owner of the Rockets, bought the franchise out of Connecticut. The Connecticut Sun, I think, is what the name of it was. And so he's moving the franchise to Houston. And so the ghost of Cheryl Swoops and Cynthia Cooper will be roaming the Toyota Center soon. I think they have already officially come out and said they will be the Houston Comets again.
Well, they were an unbelievable team. I mean, they won the first 2 or 3 championships, I think, in the WNBA. They were outstanding players. Cheryl Swoops and Cynthia Cooper were such great teammates on that team. Just beautiful.
I think they have a built-in fan base. Go ahead, Lee.
Well, I was just going to ask you, I don't remember, why did they go bankrupt in 2008, or did they just somebody buy them and move them, or you're down in that neck of the woods?
I can't remember what the story was. I know that they had a tremendous following down here, and you're right. They won the first couple of championships, and they were rolling. And I'm not sure exactly what happened to that franchise.
I don't know either, but I do know that all of the teams were subsidized by their NBA big brother.
Yes,
and I don't know if maybe the Rockets management just kind of said, we don't want any part of it anymore. I don't know.
I think that will be a good franchise for Houston. I'm actually surprised that they didn't get a hockey team first. They've got a built-in fan base for hockey too in Houston. That goes back to the Gordie Howe Houston Aeros
days. Yeah.
Days.
All the Howe boys played with their dad. That was pretty cool.
Inside story, we'd play a game of the week on KTXT, the college station in Lubbock, when they were at the height of their fame. And I came down as a college student and talked to the general manager at KTRH, I think, that was carrying their games. And they allowed us to have one game a week and take out all the advertising because, we were non-commercial.
Wow.
So that's just sort of a
sidebar
cool there. Let's get to scatter shooting. Kevin, what's your scatter shooting moment this week?
Well, the Final Four, I'm wondering, it was probably too bad Michigan and Arizona are matched up right away. But I'm wondering if we'll see this. Michigan and Arizona will have to absolutely play all out, lights out to win that game. And then when they win that game, they're not going to have that much left over for the winner of, Connecticut and...
who's in the other bracket? UConn,
Illinois.
Not Iowa, but
Illinois. I'm sorry, Illinois.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, Coach K, what's your scatter shooting moment this week?
Well, I'm kind of wondering when we're going to draw the line with Tiger Woods and his driving. not the golf ball, his automobiles. How many is he going to roll? And pretty soon it's going to be somebody else involved. I mean, your name can only get you so far. And I've lost some friends to drunk drivers. And this one here, it just, so far he's been very fortunate that it's just been him.
Yeah.
I've never seen a guy completely roll a car like he does. I don't know what he's doing.
He ruined one leg in the first wreck out in California up on Palos Verdes. And, here he is again. I mean, the guy, he's a smart man, but he's not smart. I mean, they need to mandatorily put the breathalyzers on all his vehicles
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. If you put the over and under on John Daly or Tiger Woods getting DUIs, you would have taken the unfortunate one with John Daly, and he's never had one, So
I think he can afford a driver, don't you think, Coach?
Well, I think he probably can, and the fact is, right now, just the proof is there. I mean, fool me once, shame on, but shoot, fool me twice. This is not, again, like I said, I've lost some friends to drunk drivers, and I'm not very sympathetic, to people who drink and drive, and something I've never, I can knock on wood myself, never did. I just couldn't do it. If I was going to drink, I wasn't going to drive, and then if I was going to drive, vice versa. So I have lost a lot of respect for the man and the fact that he just can't seem to control
Yeah. I think he's
that
lost a
bad.
lot of fans because of it as well, Coach. I think you're absolutely right.
So that's mine, and
That's a
So-
tough
Tom,
one.
what's your scatter shooting moment?
Well, I'm going to go with something kind of out of this world, if you will. I'm pretty excited that the United States has decided to go back to the moon. I know that's not a sports topic, but I'm pretty excited about Artemis. I think supposedly going to lift off tomorrow. I think they gave the go for launch yesterday or earlier today. So it's pretty exciting for the city of Houston, for the United States in general, and obviously for the space program. With my dad having been the simulations controller out at NASA for many, many years, from Apollo Soyuz all the way through the shuttle missions, I know this is making him happy, and I'm excited about it too, having grown up in the Clear Lake area and been around all those kids and all those
You bet.
guys.
You bet. Lee, what's your scatter shooting moment?
Well, I'm going to take it back to sports, but I want to give Cody Campbell some props. He brought up that subject again of playing Texas football college football on a high school Friday night. In October, they got Texas Tech, I think, and Baylor or somebody scheduled to play, and he's ranting and raving about don't schedule college football games on Friday night in Texas. It's Friday Night Lights. And
I agree. Good call.
I know SMU, whatever league they're in, they keep bouncing around, but the league they were in, they were one of the first ones to do the Friday night thing, and then it got
the
to that MAC,
ACC.
that MAC Nation. Anything, it's all about the money and being on TV and all of that. But I can't believe Joey McGuire hadn't said something about it because being an old high school coach, he harps on that a lot. So I'm not a native Texan, but I lived here long enough to appreciate Friday Night Lights. So I just think the colleges ought to leave it alone. At least you don't do it in Oklahoma, or you want to do it in Colorado, or you want to do it in, anywhere else. That's fine. But I think it's pretty reasonable here in Texas to leave it like it is.
Agreed. All the way across the board, I think. Well, my scatter shooting moment this week includes two major league pitchers. That's McCullers and Justin Verlander. And the question is, which direction are their careers headed? Last night, McCullers, for the first time since 2022, pitched 7 innings in a ball game, and he had a great outing. He was pitched 7 innings, struck out 9, only walked 1. And I got to tell you, he looked like he did 5 years ago. Now
I
he's
agree.
gone
He
through
looked
all.
sharp.
Yeah, he's gone through all this Tommy John stuff again, and they say it normally takes you about 2 years to be completely healthy. But he's in his early 30s now. He's got a chance to come back and resurrect his career. And if he does, I think the Astros are back in the playoffs. But it's only one game, so we'll see how it goes. But speaking of one game, Justin Verlander had his debut with the Detroit Tigers and looked god-awful. Couldn't get out of the 4th inning, gave up 5 runs. And I think, unlike McCullers, I think he needs to really take a look, at the situation. I know that he has some records that he is aspiring to get. But I think, you don't want to become an embarrassment just because you're out there trying to break a record or something.
I agree. I'd like to see him actually move more into the bullpen if he's going to hang around. I think he might be okay for an inning or two, but he's been a starter his whole career. He doesn't want to do something like that. We talked, I think, in our first episode, I think that was my scatter shooting moment was Justin Verlander coming back and going back to Detroit. So I hear you. I think I hate when professionals of any ilk don't understand when it's time to walk away.
Right. And Kevin walked away just then.
Yeah.
What happened?
I think it happens to Kevin every week. I'm not sure what happens, but I think his internet goes on the fritz or whatever. But, that's my take. I think that if I was buying stock, I'd buy stock in McCullers and I'd be selling off Verlander. I just don't know that he's going to come back to be any type of strong starter, in the rest of his career. But it's only one game, so we'll see how it goes. That's right. All right, guys, that's it for Sportz-USA for this week. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll be back here 1 week from today with our take on things in the world of sports. Good night, everybody.
Take care.
Good night.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of Sportz-USA, available at our website at sportswithaz-usa.com. And remember to click and favorite so you can join us next time on sportsusa.com.